Okay, Bob, I've heard the story several times, and you were intimately involved in an unusual thing that happened in the scoreboard down at the ballpark. What happened?
Well, this was back in 1943, during the war. Gordy Phillips, late Gordy Phillips, and myself were hired as kids to operate the scoreboard. And that was when it was out in center field, and we had no communications with the press box or anything. It was all by observation from out there, the umpire's hands and so forth, with balls and strikes and outs. And they were on boxes there that you turned. You'd strike 1, 2, 3, ball 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. And this was a series, as I remember, with Batavia. And towards the end of the season, and the two teams were locked up pretty tight, back and forth. If I remember right, they had a playoff at the end of the season or something like that. They were tight all the way through the season, and this was a real tight ball game, and like 1-1 or something like that, and gone into extra innings. And there was a ball hit into right center field by the Jamestown batter, and the center fielder was running towards right, and the right fielder was running towards center. Like I say, it was right in the gap. Both of them running full speed and towards the ball. I think probably, the way it looked to me, is if either one of them could have probably caught it. And I don't know, the thought came to me right at the moment, because I was a kid. I didn't want to spend all night out there. I wanted to get this ball game over with. So I stuck my head around the end of the scoreboard and hollered, I got it, I got it! And both of them pulled up and stopped, and the ball dropped between them and rolled to the wall for an extra base hit. So after the play, the outfielder threw the ball in. I think the guy got a triple out of it, but that did break up the ball game, and the center fielder was operated right in front of the scoreboard most of the time. I turned around and he said, you little so-and-so, I'll get you after the ball game. Well, in those days we got paid after every ball game. And Gordy or I, neither one of us went in to get paid that night. We went over the fence and out through the parking lot and home.
It made a difference in the game.
Oh yes, yeah, they scored, like I said, it was an extra inning, and I think the batter got a triple out of it, and they got him in to win the ball game 2-1. He was a little...
Since 1941, more than 2.5 million fans have heeded the advice of Harry Carey and have clicked the turnstiles to see the stars of tomorrow. Over 100 Jamestown players have graduated to the big show, with Nellie Fox being the only one to go from Jamestown to Cooperstown. Not all of the memories in Jamestown have come from those players on the field. There have been an awful lot of unsung heroes. Bob Payne is one of those. Bob was born January 6, 1926, in Jamestown, where he also graduated from the high school and was employed by Hope's Architectural Products. Bob started things with the Jamestown Falcons in 1942. Here, let him tell the story.
I started in 1942 when my mother and my dad and myself were great Falcon fans, baseball fans. I can remember the first ball games I went to were in Sauron Park when the Falcons played up there, and then of course Allen Park, seeing the great Magley pitch down there, which is a highlight of that I remember the most. And then down at Municipal Stadium, or College Stadium, and then along came the war when we lived out on Spencer Road out in the town of Kyneton at that time, and they put the ban on pleasure driving. It kind of put a crimp in our attending baseball games. It was a little too far to walk from out there, and so I told my dad, I said, let me see if they got a job here that I can do. So I went and asked for a job, and they needed somebody right at the time to do the scoreboard. So I said I'd do it, so we could go to the ball games, and my folks had to drive me to work. And it worked out real well. And it took two of us to run that scoreboard. The other party was the late Gordy Phillips.
Bob's good.
Well, just because was part of baseball, I thought it was great. I really loved it. And after the game, we could come in, and if I had to wait around, we got paid every night. And to wait around the locker room there to get paid, to get acquainted and talk with some of the ball players, which I really enjoyed. And like, what's his name, League Johnson there, the last, he said, I think he probably had done it for nothing. That's you know, but get paid for it, that was a bonus.
It was a mechanical scoreboard. How did the scoreboard work?
Well, there was 3 big boxes, probably about this square, about this high, and they were centered on pipes so that they turned. And there was one for balls, one for strikes, one for outs. And one of us would work balls, one would work strikes. And right beside each one of these boxes was a peephole you'd look through and watch. And you had to go by the umpire's gesture with a strike. If there was no gesture, it was a ball. Well, we had a little problem with that at times, because you take a right-handed an umpire and take a left-handed batter up there, and he'd come up with a strike right behind the batter and you couldn't see it. Or you couldn't see the count, then you'd spin the box. And the press box would say, correction scoreboard, strike 2, you know, whatever it was, whatever the count was, then we put it up there. And then at the end of it was like a catwalk behind you walk back and forth on. And the open racks down below for the line score. And at the end there was a little building, or a little shack, with the racks on the side in there. And these square metal pieces about so big with a number on them. Well, they were all lined up, so they all had a 0 on one side, and then a number on the other side. And they started out at the first part of the rack with the 1s, then the 2s and the 3s and so forth, on up. And I think we had a couple or 3. They went up to 10, I think. They didn't very often score more than 10 runs in one inning.
Better not.
And, yeah. Well, I remember one game, because he'd always start out by going in and grabbing the first rack, you know, if it was 0. And you use up the 1s, then you'd start on the 2s, and you get, as they worked it back. Well, this has gone into late innings, and we're pretty well back in the rack, you know, and the score I remember was 0-0 or 1-1. I know it was a real tight ball game, and they're in extra innings. And I'm talking with Gordy, and I walked back to get another 0 to drop in, because whoever they were playing had scored no runs in the top of the inning. It was like the 11th inning or something like that. I walked in and picked up the thing out of the rack, and I'm talking to Gordy, and I walk over and I throw it in the hole. As soon as I dropped it in the hole, a roar went up from the crowd. I knew what I'd done. I dropped it in the wrong way. And I gave him about 9 runs in the top of it.
What a hell of a hurt on average.
Yeah. Well, another thing we used to do out there was one guy could run it, keep him busy, but we'd take turns. You remember, just a block away, well, it was about 2 blocks away from the scoreboard. You'd have to walk all the way around the stadium, over around the Faulkner Street, and then there was 1 block over to Second Street. And right at Second and Hopkins was Bico ice cream. We'd take turns going over there, and each of us get a pint of ice cream, and sit out there and run the scoreboard and eat ice cream. Great job, I'll tell you. I think that was 42 and 43. At 44, early 44, I went into service, so that was the end of my scoreboard operating for that period of time.
After a 38-year absence from the scoreboard at Canal College Stadium, Bob returns. Here's his story.
1982, they used to bring the team in here about the 1st of June, right after Memorial Day, the draftees and so forth, and fellows going to play here this year, or some that weren't going to play. And they had a spring training session right here at College Stadium. And I worked right across the river over at Hope's Windows. And I'd take my lunch every day and go over and sit in the stands and watch them work out, and eat my lunch over there, and then rush back and get back in time to go to work, 12:30. And I was over there one day watching, and that was when they were erecting the new scoreboard, and the one that was in left field, which is the old one now. But I remarked to Danny Lynette on the way out to go back to work. I said, "They're coming right along with that scoreboard." And I said, "Man, it's a lot bigger than I expected. I didn't think it was going to be that big." "Yeah," he said, "it's pretty good size." He says, "They're going to have it all done by the time the season starts." But he said, "What I need now is somebody to run it." And right away I said, "Well, I'll run it." And he said, "You will?" And I thought, "Well, now wait a minute. Let me think this out a little bit." You know? I finally, and I said, "Yeah, I'll run it." He said, "You got the job." He gave me the controls of it, which had a little screen on it about so big. You push the control, and everything that would go on the scoreboard showed up on the screen. You take that home, all you got to do is plug it in and practice running it. So I did, and then when the season started, I started, and I've been there since.
Dan Lynetta hired Bob Payne in 1982, and as he indicated, he stayed there right through the 2000 season, where he was honored in retirement that year. Among the most interesting and exciting people to don a uniform in Jamestown is Pat Doherty. Bob, what are your recollections?
And here, up there, I'll never forget. It was a real pleasure to work up there when Pat Doherty was here. I'll tell you, Pat was a master at baiting an umpire. I'll tell you. Oh, the umpire made a call one time down there, and Pat come flying out of the dugout, and he walked out there. And he turned his hat around backwards, and he's right up in his face, and he says, "Those people up there know you made a shitty call." He said, "The other team knows you made a shitty call. Our team knows you made a shitty call. I know you made a shitty call." And then about that umpire throw him out. But up there you can hear every word. And it gets interesting at times. And score, he's the one that has the problem.
How do you do hits and errors? Who makes that judgment?
Briggs, he's the official scorer.
Does he consult with you?
We
Well, I know.
We
We know
just-
Vince McIntyre. We're off the record. Yeah.
we do this by committee. Todd Peterson and I give Riggs a hard time most of the time.
Your advisors.
And he'll, if he's down on the ground with, the first part of the ball game, he'll be down there with a camera to get some pictures. And down there, we'll look at him, and he'll give you this or this, hit or an error. But when he's up in the press box, why, he says, oh, that's an error. An error? I says, Jesus, did you ever hear it too hot to handle? You know, the line drive, base hit all the way, you know. And give him a hard time. And
Bob was not only the scoreboard operator for the Jamestown Falcons, Expos, and Jammers, but also other baseball activities.
after I started doing them for the Expos down there, then they came to me from the high school, wanted me to do the high school games. They're doing that for me. But then, did you ever go through the lineup, the team from Cheektowaga? Wow. I'll tell you.
Englishmen, all Englishmen.
Yeah. And then he's got the whole alphabet in the one name. And it gives
You all
I've done every one except the first one. Done the scoreboard. The first one was in 1980.
have any idea how many games you have done from there and center field?
Well, altogether, I tried to scratch some of them together here. A little addition. I got just under 800.
800.
800.
I noticed your ring, Bob. What's that?
Well, that's the pride of my scoreboard operation right there. That's 1991. The Expos won the New York Penn League, won the playoffs, and they all got championship rings. And to my surprise, I got one. It's got my name on it. Everything. That's my pride and joy right there.
Great recognition.
Yes.
What else does it say beside your name?
It says New York Penn League. New York Penn League champions. Jamestown Expos 1991.
Beautiful.
And on this side it's got New York, a map of New York and Pennsylvania. And my name is above it. There's a place underneath there for your uniform number. Well, I don't have a uniform number, so I left it blank. They said they were going to put SB on there for scoreboard, but somebody might misinterpret it. Yeah.
The camera?
I was just going to bring that up. That was probably one of the highlights of that I remember the most of keeping score down there on that scoreboard.
We're in Jamestown, New York, home of the Jamestown Expos. And the Expos field is going to be the setting later tonight for one of the most unusual candid camera sequences we've ever tried.
Because we was fighting for a playoff spot with Erie. So Tom O'Reilly says, I got a great idea. I got a call from Candid Camera this 10 o'clock in the morning. He said they want to come over here and I said, why the hell would they want to come to Jamestown, New York? He said, well, they want to do something on minor league baseball. And I said, they got some teams, you know, they got some clubs. The Mets have got a club. I think the Mets then were at involved in that. I don't know exactly what town it was. He said, I don't know, but they want to come here and do it. And I said, well, Tom, I'll tell you, you better check with the front office. I said, who knows? So anyway, he says, I'll check. He calls back and said, I said, I got no problem with it. He calls back and said, Montreal said it's fine. So when Peter's telling me what they're going to do, I'm thinking, that ain't going to go. But, you know, it's not going to. It's going to be. So he told Juan Lopez was managing Niagara Falls, and we were in the race then with Erie. Shit, we was going right down to the thing where, and I thought, this is going to screw everything up. I mean, we were like a half a game back, and we had a doubleheader. This was in between games of a doubleheader. And nobody noticed that the two umpires in the first game, when he come out, nobody noticed the difference. I'm going to do it. He says, you know, I don't. He said, that's going to make Baxter mad. And so only Hargis knew it, the catcher. I knew it, and Juan Lopez, the manager of Niagara Falls. Nobody else knew it.
I come in for the first game and walked into the press box. And the next box to us was all this TV equipment. Now, we're used to TV equipment up there with the stations in Erie. Once in a while, a Buffalo station. I'll be down there with shoulder-held cameras. But this was big stuff. This is big cameras on a tripod and so forth. And they had, as I recall, about 3 cameras. And all the time, they're all set up there, and all the time through the first game, this one guy over there is telling them, yeah, that's good, right? Oh, that angle right there. I said, bring it a little closer, bring it a little closer. He's giving all his directions, but they're not shooting. He's looking through this camera. And Todd and Jim Riggs were there when I came, and I asked him, I said, what? Nobody knew. So the one guy that was doing all the talking over there, and I thought, man, I've seen that guy somewhere before. Not thinking about who it was or anything, but it came the second game. Prior to the second game, during the intermission between the games, this fellow come over to our booth and he said, I suppose you fellas are wondering what's going on. And I said, well, the thought had crossed our mind. Well, he introduced himself. He says, I'm Alan Font, Jr. And we're doing Candid Camera.
The Expos starting pitcher, a fellow named Bob Baxter. Now, what Baxter doesn't know is that his catcher is working tonight for the Candid Camera. And I'm going to pose as the home plate umpire. Now, whenever Baxter tries to throw a pitch, his catcher is going to confuse him with hand signals he's never seen before. In a few hours, there'll be several thousand people here, and of course, they won't know what's going on either.
Now game time is approaching and the crowd files in. Out on the field, pitcher Bob Baxter is taking his warm-ups with catcher Dan Hargis. I'm behind the plate. One other thing, up in the press box, the game is being broadcast live on local radio station WJTN. Now, the two fellas doing the play-by-play have no idea about the Candid Camera stunt that will soon occur, and we'll listen in occasionally to their report.
The best part of the whole thing was Pete and Skip on the radio. They
Well, nobody knew anything about it. That was the biggest kept secret there was down there. I just can't believe it didn't squeak out somehow. And it was a doubleheader. Started into the second game of the doubleheader, and things just went haywire. We couldn't figure out what was going on. Doherty went out, stopped. The catcher kept stopping. No, they weren't getting the calls right, and Doherty went out and stomping out there, and he really gave him the business. And started hollering at Baxter, and all right, now get it right this time. So off the field he come, and back on the field there wasn't a pitch thrown. This went on for I don't know how many minutes. It seemed like an hour. I'll tell you, it seemed just like an hour, because every time that pitcher would wind up, the catcher would stop him. Something would stop him, and he was getting absolutely frustrated. He didn't know what he was doing wrong. He just knew something was wrong, and he didn't know what he was doing wrong. So Doherty finally went out there, and he said, that's it, out. So they ejected him, or the umpire, I guess it was, ejected. And as he came down off the mound, and he went up to him, the umpire, of course, was Candid Camera. Can't think of his name now. But he walked up to him, put his arm over his shoulder, and he walked like, I don't know what I've done. His head was hanging down. He was really dejected. And he put his arm around him, and he said, smile, you're on Candid Camera. And it wasn't until a couple minutes after that they announced it on the PA system, because the whole crowd, everybody had been agitated by it. Everybody was upset. What the heck? You know, I've never seen anything like this. Come on, what's going on? And they were jeering and hollering and carrying on. It was absolutely fantastic. And when Todd announced it on the PA system, it just, everybody went nuts. It was.
Ball leads off against left-hander Rob Baxter, and we're set. Now we got time called, and there's confusion between the pitcher and the catcher, so let's get together.
How can you get messed up on the first signal of the ball game?
Three, slider, with okay? All right, cool.
This is ridiculous. I mean, this is the 48th game of the season, fans. If you don't have your signal straight by this time, I mean, you open up with a fastball. 9 times out of 10.
Time! What's going on here, Ted? Huh? You put down a number there. Just a minute. What is going on out here? Not putting down a number, just putting down, I know what it is. How long you two guys play together? You don't know the signals, let's go. We've never done that before. What? Night signals? Come on now. Fellas, we've been out here 5 minutes. We haven't thrown a pitch yet. Well, put down the numbers. All right. I don't know what you're doing. You did. You just missed it. I don't know what that is, then. That's not a It's not numbers. With the fingers. That's it. You think you can do this now? We're going to get your manager out here and get you out of this game, fella. I don't know what these are, Dan. Hey, make sure you keep an eye on me now. I'm watching you.
We haven't started the ball game yet. I tell you, maybe it's time for Baxter to get himself a set of glasses. They ought to take him to the optometrist tomorrow to get him examined. As Hargis, evidently not the culprit, he doesn't seem to believe it either for some reason.
I don't understand what's going on here. I absolutely don't understand. Looks like Baxter's ready. He's looking in, and he's still nodding no. Still nodding no, and I don't know what he's doing. He's still nodding no. As if he can't see or something. His time is gone.
Now the home plate umpire is going to go over and talk to management, I believe, or they're going to put him on base.
It's good news for the refreshment stand. You folks that's down there in the refreshment area, stay in line. We haven't started the ball game yet.
I don't have all night to play this game. Well, you pitched since you were a little league? He's not giving me numbers. Who isn't? Yeah, he's going like this, like this, like this. He's what? He's not putting down numbers. No, wait, hey, you get back behind the plate.
Our team didn't know what the hell was going on.
You're not giving any numbers? What you doing? He told him to give me numbers, I'll throw it. And what's he giving you? He's giving me this and this and this. What does that mean? No idea. What? You don't know what it means? Just a minute, I'll run you out of here. What does it mean? What does this mean? No idea. I've no idea.
Are you going to throw a pitch tonight, or are we going to stand here and talk about it?
It's on a 1. I'll throw a fastball.
Are you going to play ball?
Of course I am.
Yeah, I'm going to give you one more chance to have this fella play ball. Otherwise, we're going to run him out of here.
Can't let him out. I don't have any more pitches.
Well, we're going to forfeit. All right, let's go. Let's go. Okay, we're still waiting the first pitch. We're getting time called again. And now the umpire again going out to talk to the pitcher. And he pointed, he's out of there. He threw Baxter out of the ballgame. He pointed, he's out of there.
Clear him out of the game. Look at Baxter. He just dropped the ball and walked off.
He threw Baxter out of the ballgame. One of the most unbelievable things in the history of professional baseball we're seeing right here.
My name's Peter Funt, and I do the Candid Camera show, bud. And we just caught you on Candid Camera. Now, there's the camera up there taking your picture, and you are one of the nicest guys we've ever caught on Candid Camera, although you're shaking like a leaf.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like you all to smile because you and the Expos are on Candid Camera.
Candid Camera, folks, and we've all been taken.
Well, I guess we have.
And
We
I mean
sucked
it.
right into it, believe me. They did a great job.
Remember that, all, Pete?
Oh, yes. Very fortunate that Skip didn't come out with one of his famous "goddammits." He was very close. He gets upset quickly. It would be something like that.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. It was well done. No, they handled it well. I felt sorry for the pitcher. He was so befuddled out there.
Hot or not. Yeah. And the best part of the whole thing was Pete and Skip on the radio. They plugged them right in, so Pete and Skip were giving the blow-by-blow over the radio, and this is right in on the film. And I'll tell you, when it was all over with, and they're watching the tape up there in the booth, Alan Funt was literally rolling on the floor. It was that good. And Pete went out of his mind. Alan Funt was the umpire. And he threw that pitcher out of the ball game, and he hadn't thrown a pitch yet. And Skip says, he can't do that. He hasn't even thrown a ball yet, and he's thrown him out of the ball game. He can't do that.
I'm Kristen Stein, Director of the Fenton History Center in Jamestown, New York. We hope you've enjoyed this presentation, which is just one of many stories from our community's rich history. The Fenton History Center preserves our shared history with the presentation of educational programs and exhibits, the maintenance of a collection of local artifacts and archival materials, and a library specializing in local history and genealogy, all for the benefit and use of the public. For more information about the Fenton History Center and its activities, call 664-6256.